Here is the fact. I never want to go anywhere. My ideal routine is a quiet home time with some occasional walks. I can even stay inside for several days in a row just because I don't feel like being out. If I lived in a house in the countryside with actual nature around, things might be different. But my city-dwelling reality is like this. A highly sensitive introvert with some deep-rooted social anxiety. This is my psychological label, but recently I have decided to challenge it and set off on a curious adventure of becoming an art vendor in Belgrade, Serbia. In this video, I will share 3 most uncomfortable things that I've done on this journey and what very important insights I got. Also, part of today's video is kindly sponsored by Skillshare, but more about them later. I'm so glad to have you all here, and if you're new on this channel, hi, I'm Anna, and here I talk about minimalism, mindful and simple living, and all sorts of personal adventures and thoughts that they trigger. So, the first very uncomfortable thing that I've done after joining the art market in Belgrade is the following. Socializing in the crowd as an introvert and HSP. When I applied for taking part in the Belgrade Art Bazaar, which was part of the Illustration Festival, I fully realized that it meant being physically present in front of hundreds of people for several days in a row. I was genuinely terrified, but I still did it because recently I began to feel that I'm completely losing my grip on reality. I felt deep isolation, and I needed a proof that not everything was lost yet, that the past couple of years did not ruin my offline social skills. So, after the first day of the art market, and it lasted for 3 days, I was exhausted. I felt really down and separated from the actual world around. I was out of my shell, vulnerable, and waiting for the worst things to happen. I'm the type of introvert who wears their heart on their sleeve. My emotions are written on my face always, and I cannot fake anything, even for myself. I cannot get safely illusional or falsely optimistic. But I still made it to the second day, and that's when everything changed. I met wonderful people, got tons of inspiration, hope, and motivation to continue doing and making what I'm really passionate about. I realized that once we open our mental doors, at first there might be just the wind blowing through them, sometimes just the cold wind, but then, after some time passes and we gather courage not to shut the doors again, we suddenly hear the birds singing, see the trees, other people, clouds, feel the sun on our skin. Sometimes it's so worth doing something that you haven't done for so long, even though you believe that you no longer have courage, skills, or energy for that. It's so worth to prove yourself wrong. Because chances, opportunities, and new wonderful acquaintances never knock on the door that is locked firmly. That was my first very important realization, and the second one arose from some much bigger challenge for me. Swimming against mainstream trends. At the moment, I'm advocating for analog, slow, and AI-free art, which is not a winning concept in current circumstances. And for this art bazaar in Belgrade, I have decided to display only originals, no copies and no prints. This decision didn't have only philosophical reasons, but practical ones as well. But I talk about all these kind of details, including my finances, wins, and frustrations related to the participation in the art market in my Patreon community. In a nutshell, I felt terrified by this decision, but I still challenged myself to offer only the artwork that is drawn by hand, cut by hand, and glued by hand, and that was not mainstream, something that was pricier and not something exactly that you would expect at an illustration festival. I had to watch people go past my booth or stop by and looking at my quirky creations. Then, if I noticed their interest, I would begin to tell what I do, what drawing technique and ink I use, how we have collected vintage books on our trip in the Balkans. I would tell about my fascination with birds and invite people to see that it's all originals, not prints. When we decide to do something that is outside the current norm in a given place and within a given time period, it's not easy to be understood and even accepted. We need to explain and even over explain, but it's so worth it, and I believe it is important to do that because otherwise, how can we change the current trends? Swimming against the current causes a lot of discomfort, but I do believe that having an actual opinion and means to express it is so important. We cannot play safe all the time because otherwise our personalities get washed out, our potentials grow pale. I'm using my art only as an example here, but you can put anything, any personal choice that you make and that might be outside the general sea of the mainstream. Honestly, I'm also guilty of playing safe a lot. I understand and enjoy the comfort of it, but sometimes we just need to scratch the smooth and perfect surface of the reality to find new meanings, the meanings that we never knew we needed at the moment. But all philosophy aside, how did I do with my art on the market? Not as bad as it could be. Some frustrations, some delights, but very satisfied with the actual experience. Mostly because I let myself see that I can do things that before seemed scary as hell and utterly impossible. Also, swimming against the stream, you might notice that you are not alone. And this realization was very precious. Which brings me to the third uncomfortable thing that I did. Having the courage to put yourself out there. I have started this YouTube channel 2 years ago when I was still living in my Siberian home city, and there my most challenging social experience was taking part in a marketing conference. But this art bazaar was far more difficult. Because we can always hide behind our jobs. At that very marketing conference, I was trying to be funny and likable, but I was mostly awkward. But I was just an employee of my company, and I always hid behind that status, so to say. But here, at the vendor booth in Belgrade, I was someone bold enough to display what I make and offer it for money. You're always judged for that. When you put yourself out there, you're always judged. And I think evolutionary, we are very deeply afraid of that, because judgment can turn into critique, non-acceptance, and even attacks sometimes. I anticipated all that and was ready for the worst, but it was much better at the end of the day. I am not too humble to say that I'm very proud of myself, and I think it's well deserved. I think we all deserve to be proud of ourselves for everything that we do every given day. And I'm very thankful for the community that I have here and on Patreon, because this is how I made it possible for myself. And also I want to thank the sponsor of today's video, Skillshare, that has been supporting this channel for quite a while. Skillshare is an online learning community with lots of different classes on the most various topics, from hobbies and art to career-oriented ones. Here I learned how to develop my personal and professional skills and how to gain courage and express myself without comparisons, self-doubt or procrastination. To get ready for the market, I've watched dozens of classes on Skillshare, from the ones about how to sell and how to set up the booth to much deeper ones, such as just make stuff, getting creative with side projects, by Jessica Walsh and Timothy Goodman. They explore what's worked in their careers and why, ways to start a side project, and how to tap into the resources that you already have to bring projects to life. This class is fantastic for everyone, not just creatives, as it shows how to think outside the box, and this is the skill that we all need. You can discover new exciting opportunities right now for free. The first 1,000 people to use my link will get 1 month of free trial. 1 month of unlimited access to the fantastic library of classes, and if you don't like it, you can quit within the trial month without being charged anything. And here is my main takeaway. By becoming an art vendor in Belgrade, yet once again I got the proof why it is so important to nourish intention, to stay true to my values, to remember why I'm doing all this. I want to talk about the preciousness of real things, about art created by individuals and not machines, about authentic stories and not heavily curated ones. I want to show that all people with vulnerabilities should not be ashamed of who they are and what they can offer to this world, because it is so worth it and it's so very important. Feel free to share in the comments what you think about all these, whether you can relate to my realizations or not and why. And thank you so much for being here. I value your time and attention so much. And big thanks to everyone who supports me on Patreon and other tipping platforms, because thanks to you, I can create more than ever. And for now, be safe and keep your heart open, and I will see you soon. Пока-пока.